Text 7. Yasyam vai shruyamanaayam Krishne paramapurushe bhaktir utpadyate pumsa shoka moha bhayapaha.
Translation. Simply by giving oral reception to this Vedic literature, the feeling for loving devotional service to Lord Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, sprouts up at once to extinguish the fire of lamentation, illusion, and fearfulness.
Text 8. Sasamhitam bhagavatim kritvanukramya chamajam shukam adhyapayam asha nivriti niratam munihi.
Translation. The great sage Vyasadeva, after compiling the Srimad Bhagavatam and revising it, taught it to his own son, Sri Sukadeva Goswami, who was already engaged in self-realization.
Text 9. Shaunak uvacha savai nivriti nirataha sarvatropekshako munihi kasya vabhratim etam atmaramah samvyasat.
Translation. Sri Sonaka asked Suta Goswami, Sri Sukadeva Goswami was already on the path of self-realization, and thus he was pleased with his own self. So why did he take the trouble to undergo the study of such a vast literature?
Text 10. Sutta uvacha atmaramascha munayo nirgrantha api urukrame kurvanti ahaitu bhaktim itham bhuta guno harihi.
Suta Goswami said, all different varieties of Atma Ramas, those who take pleasure in the Atma or spirit self, especially those established on the path of self-realization, though freed from all kinds of material bondage, desire to render unalloyed devotional service unto the personality of Godhead. This means that the Lord possesses transcendental qualities and therefore can attract everyone, including liberated souls.
Text 11. Harir gunakshipta matir bhagavan badarayanihi adhyagan mahad akhyanam nityam vishnu jana priyah.
Translation. Srila Sukadeva Goswami, son of Srila Vyasadeva, was not only transcendently powerful, he was also very dear to the devotees of the Lord. Thus, he underwent the study of this great narration, Srimad Bhagavatam.
Text 12. Parikshitoth rajersir janma karma vilapanam samstham cha pandu putranam vakshe krishna kathodayam.
Translation. Suta Goswami thus addressed the rishis headed by Sonaka. Now, I shall begin the transcendental narration of the Lord Sri Krishna and topics of the birth, activities, and deliverance of King Parikshit, the sage among kings, as well as topics of the renunciation of the worldly orders by the son of Pandu.
Text 13 to 14. Yadamrit kaurava sranjayanam vireshva atho vir gatim gateshu vrikodarvadvidha gadabhimarsha bhagnorudande dhritarashtraputre भर्तुः प्रियं द्रोणीर् इति स्म पाश्यान् कृष्णासुतानां स्वपतां शिरांसि उपहारद्विप्रियम् एव तस्य जुगुप्सितं कर्म विगर्हयन्ति.
Translation. When the respective warriors of both camps, namely the Kauravas and the Pandavas, were killed on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, and the dead warriors obtained their deserved destinations, and when the son of Dhritarashtra fell down lamenting, his spine broken, being beaten by the club of Bhimsen, the son of Dronacharya, Ashwathama, beheaded the 5 sleeping sons of Draupadi and delivered the heads as a prize to his master, foolishly thinking that he would be pleased. Duryodhan, however, disapproved of the heinous act, and he was not pleased in the least.
Text 15. Mata shishunam nidhanam sutanam nishamya ghoram paritapyamana tadarudadvaspa kalakulakshi tam shantya swayan aha kirtimali.
Translation: Draupadi, the mother of the 5 children of the Pandavas, after hearing of the massacre of her sons, began to cry in distress with eyes full of tears. Trying to pacify her in her great loss, Arjuna spoke to her thus.
Text 16. Tada shuchaste pramarjami bhadri yad brahma bandhushir atatayinah गांडीव मुक्तेर्विशिखैर उपाहरे त्वक्रम्य यत्स्नयस्य दग्धपुत्रः.
Translation: O gentle lady, when I present you with the head of that Brahmana, after beheading him with arrows from my Gandiva bow, I shall then wipe the tears from your eyes and pacify you. Then, after burning your sons' bodies, you can take your bath standing on his head.
Text 17. इति प्रियं वल्गु विचित्रजल्पे सशान्त्वै यत वाच्युतमित्रश्रुतः अन्वाद्रवदंशित उग्रधन्वा कपिध्वजो गुरुपुत्रं रथेन.
Translation: Arjuna, who is guided by the infallible Lord as friend and driver, thus satisfied the dear lady by such statements. Then he dressed in armor and armed himself with furious weapons, and getting into his chariot, he set out to follow Ashwathama, the son of his martial teacher.
Hare Krishna, sorry for any mistakes.
Mataji,
Hare
we have
Krishna, it is until verse number 19.
Okay, sorry, I'll continue then.
Yes, please.
Okay. Text 18. Tam apatantam savilakshya durat kumarahodvignamanaratena paradravat prana paripshur urvayam yavad gamam rudra bhayad yathakaha.
Translation: Ashwathama, the murderer of the princess, seeing after the from a great distance Arjuna coming at him with great speed, fled in his chariot, panic-stricken, just to save his life, as Brahma fled in fear from Shiva.
Text 19. Yada sharanam atmanam ekshata shranta vajinam astram brahma shiro mene atmatranam dvijamata majaha.
Translation: When the son of the Brahmana, Ashwathama, saw that his horses were tired, he considered that there was no alternative for protection outside of his using the ultimate weapon, the Brahmastra, nuclear weapon. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much, Matajis. Sumadura Mataji is reciting very well in Sanskrit, and Shriya Mataji, beautiful English recitation. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Hare
Let me
Krishna.
see, Sachi Rani Mataji has joined us.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Mataji.
Hare Krishna.
Please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Please
So
accept
Mataji,
my
I'm
humble
going to make you the co-host now, if that's all right.
Sure. Thank
Thank you. Can you let me know under which name should I make it? Is it Shushma?
Shushma Makhwani.
Okay, sorry about that.
Yeah,
Thank
sorry,
you.
I couldn't change my name. I tried, but
That's all right. Okay, have you, here we are. Have you received it?
yes.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. I'll just try and share my screen. Om Namah Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritte Naram Shiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udirave Nashtaprayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttam Shloke Bhaktir Bhakti Nashtitam. Okay, so we're reading verse 1.7.11. Harir Gunakshiptamate Bhagavan Bhadray Nahi Adhyagan Mahad Akhyan Nam Nityam Vishnu Jana Priyaha Harir Gunakshiptamate Bhagavan Bhadriyani Adhyagan Mahad Akhyanam Nityam Vishnu Jana Priyaha Harir Gunakshiptamate Bhagavan Bhadrayani Adhyagan Mahad Akhyanam Nityam Vishnu Jana Priyaha. Word for word. Hare of Hari, the personality of Godhead. Guna, transcendental attributes. Akshipta, being absorbed in. Bhagavan, powerful. Bhadrayani, the son of Vyasadeva. Adhyagat, underwent studies. Mahat Akhyanam, narration. Nityam, regularly. Vishnu Jana, devotees of the Lord. Priyaha, beloved. Translation. Srila Sukadev Goswami, son of Srila Vyasadeva, was not only transcendently powerful, he was also very dear to the devotees of the Lord. Thus he underwent the study of this great narration, Srimad Bhagavatam. Purport by Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. According to the Brahma Vaivarta Purana, Srila Sukadev Goswami was a liberated soul even within the womb of his mother. Srila Vyasadeva knew that the child after his birth would not stay at home. Therefore, he, Vyasadeva, impressed upon him the synopsis of the Bhagavatam, so that the child could be made attached to the transcendental activities of the Lord. After his birth, the child was still more educated in the subject of the Bhagavatam by recitation of the actual poems. The idea is that generally the liberated souls are attached to the features of impersonal Brahman, with a monistic view of becoming one with the Supreme Whole. But by association of pure devotees like Vyasadeva, even the liberated soul becomes attracted to the transcendental qualities of the Lord. By the mercy of Sri Narada, Srila Vyasadeva was able to narrate the great epic of Srimad Bhagavatam. And by the mercy of Vyasadeva, Srila Sukadev Goswami was able to grasp the import. The transcendental qualities of the Lord are so attractive that Srila Sukadev Goswami became detached from being completely absorbed in impersonal Brahman and positively took up the personal activity of the Lord. Practically, he was thrown from the impersonal conception of the Absolute, thinking within himself that he had simply wasted so much time in devoting himself to the impersonal feature of the Supreme. Or, in other words, he realized more transcendental bliss with the personal feature than the impersonal. And from that time, not only did he himself become very dear to the Vishnu Janas, or the devotees of the Lord, but also the Vishnu Janas became very dear to him. The devotees of the Lord who do not wish to kill the individuality of the living entity and who desire to become personal servitors of the Lord do not very much like the impersonalists, and similarly, the impersonalists who desire to become one with the Supreme are unable to evaluate the devotees of the Lord. Thus, from time immemorial, these two transcendental pilgrims have sometimes been competitors. In other words, each of them likes to keep separate from the other because of the ultimate personal and impersonal realizations. Therefore, it appears that Srila Sukadev Goswami also had no liking for the devotees. But since he himself became a saturated devotee, he desired always the transcendental association of the Vishnu Janas. And the Vishnu Janas also liked his association, since he became a personal Bhagavata. Thus, both the son and father were completely cognizant of transcendental knowledge in Brahman, and afterwards both of them became absorbed in the personal features of the Supreme Lord. The question as to how Sukadev Goswami was attracted by the narration of the Bhagavatam is thus completely answered by this shloka. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Tapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamaya Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeyam Shri Guru Yutapad Kamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Sadbhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitam Cha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Deenabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gorangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanusute Devi Pranamami Hare Priya Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Eva Cha Patitanam Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So, Hare Krishna, everyone, and thank you so much for inviting me. I do not feel at all qualified to speak, and I've not really had a chance to really prepare, but I will try and share whatever limited knowledge I have. So this verse follows on from yesterday's verse, and we're talking about Sukadev Goswami and how he heard and read and studied the Srimad Bhagavatam, and he realized who the Supreme Personality of Godhead, not just who he was, but his qualities and transcendental activities. So Srimad Bhagavatam is, as we've heard, is the Mahapurana. Srila Prabhupada says that it is not fictitious. So it's not fiction. It's not a mythology. It is actually history. It did happen. And here we see that, it's called the Amalam Purana as well in Srimad Bhagavatam. So Mala means, dirty things like contamination, the material contamination. And Ama means not dirty. So this is without the material contamination. So Bhagavatam is dealing between Supreme Personality of Godhead and his devotees. That's what the Srimad Bhagavatam is about, actually. So we heard yesterday and the previous days in this canto and chapter. So in 1.7 6 to 7 verses, we heard that the suffering of the jiva can be directly mitigated by bhakti yoga, but people don't know this. So therefore, Vyasadeva compiled the Srimad Bhagavatam. So, he compiled it to help people. And by listening to the Bhagavatam, the feeling, of bhakti, prema, sprouts up and extinguishes the lamentation, illusion, and fear in human beings. So prema, we know what it is because yesterday the Prabhuji went through the stages, as you grow in your spiritual journey. So then in 1.7.8 to 9, we heard how Vyasadeva revised and gave prominence to Krishna Bhakti on the advice of his spiritual teacher Narad Muni, and taught this to his son Sukadev Goswami. So the Srimad Bhagavatam is really, really special. So we should hear, read, and speak like we're doing now. And to get Krishna Bhakti, it's really, really important. The other day I was listening to somebody and they were talking about Srimad Bhagavatam. And they said that, on the calendar, once the day is over, you turn the page, or, like in the Western world, the calendar, you see the whole 30 days, but, the Indian calendars are smaller and just one day. My mom used to have one of those, and each day she would tear out the page. So in those calendars, it's per day. So, when the day is over, you tear it out. And then you do that every day. And then when the year comes to an end, then, there's nothing left there and you buy a new calendar. So in our life, it is like that as well. Each day, when the day is over, that's it. We've lost that day. And then you get a new day until the end of life. And when end of life comes, that's it, finito. So we should really, really make use of each day, each hour, each minute, and each second. And what better way of making the best use of it by reading, hearing, studying Srimad Bhagavatam. So it's really, really important that we also, take this on. So then we heard in 1.7.9 that Sukadev Goswami was already on the path of self-realization. He was indifferent to everything and self-satisfied sage already. So why did he take the trouble to study Srimad Bhagavatam? So that's the question that came to my mind, that why did he need to? Because he was already self-realized. So if we go back a little bit in time, first to find out who Sukadev Goswami is. So he was actually Suka, a parrot. He was the parrot of Srimati Radharani. And wherever Srimati Radharani went, the parrot went. So he was actually taking part in the Leelas of Radharani and Lord Krishna. So he was there, he was watching what was happening, hearing, he was personally there. So one day, somehow, this parrot, Sukha, found himself in the forest. And in the forest, Lord Shiva was reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam to Mother Parvati. So Sukha the parrot went and sat there and he started listening. And when he started listening, he got really, really attracted to listening to the katha of the Lord. And while Lord Shiva was reciting, like we all do, Parvati ji also fell asleep. That's the thing that we all try, we try to avoid, but it happens in Srimad Bhagavatam class, we fall asleep. So Parvati ji also fell asleep. And then the parrot thought that, oh no, now Lord Shiva will stop. He will stop reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam. So the parrot started, like he was listening and responding to Lord Shiva, like, we make noises, yes, or something like that. So the parrot started doing that. So Lord Shiva thought, yes, Parvati ji is responding and she's listening. So he carried on reciting, and then the whole Bhagavatam finished. And at that point, Parvati ji woke up and she said, oh my Lord, I fell asleep. I missed the 10th canto and onwards. I didn't hear anything. So then Lord Shiva thought, but then who was responding to me then if you fell asleep? And he looked up and he saw the parrot. And he got really annoyed that this parrot was imitating, Mother Parvati. So he got really annoyed and he started chasing this parrot. He was really angry and he was chasing this parrot. So this parrot then started, flew away. And the parrot was now scared. I mean, who wouldn't be if Lord Shiva was chasing us? So he got really scared and he went where, Shri Rishi Veda Vyas was, and his wife Batika was. And she just opened her mouth as she was yawning, and the parrot flew into her mouth and went into her body and actually went into her womb. So then, he stayed in the womb for 16 years. We all know that he didn't want to come out and he was in peace. So that, brings up why did he stay in her womb? Because he was blissful. He was really happy. We know that he was blissful and a self-realized soul, but he was also a Brahmavadi. Now, what is a Brahmavadi? And personally, so in this verse, Srila Prabhupada actually in the purport explains, what the impersonal conception is. But I just wanted to elaborate on it a little bit more. So in the Krishna book, Srila Prabhupada actually describes what Brahmavadi is or impersonalism is. So he says that he describes Brahmavadis as they know who the Supreme Personality of God is, and they know that he exists, but they do not come to a conclusion. So Srila Prabhupada actually gives the example of Bhrigu Muni. So I think you must all know the story. So I won't go into the story, but I'll just say it briefly. So Bhrigu Muni, who wanted to know who the Supreme Personality of Godhead was, so he decided to do a test. So he went to Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, and he tried to insult them. So both Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma became very angry. And, when he tried to insult them, so they became really, really angry. So he thought that, oh, they can't be the Supreme Personality of Godhead because, they're showing the modes of material nature, the three modes. So then he went to Lord Vishnu and he kicked Lord Vishnu on his chest. And Lord Vishnu actually, instead of becoming angry, he said, "Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. My chest is so hard. I hope your foot didn't get hurt, So he was so humble and the way he spoke. So then Bhrigu Muni understood that this is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So then Bhrigu Muni, returned to the assembly of great sages who were on the bank of river Saraswati, and he described his experience that this what happened. So after hearing him with great attention, the sages concluded that Lord Vishnu is the greatest. Now, Srila Prabhupada explains that these sages were actually impersonalists. So, general impersonalists or student of Vedas. So they haven't come to a definite conclusion, but just by hearing what Bhrigu Muni said, they actually realized who the Supreme Personality of Godhead was because they heard about his qualities and his activity. So then they realized. In this verse, Srila Prabhupada says that impersonalists also want to merge with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So actually there are two types of impersonalists. There is Brahmavadi and also Mayavadi. Now this is all too technical, so we won't go into this in detail, but the Brahmavadis, they know that God exists. So they know that the Supreme Personality of God exists, but they haven't realized, they haven't come to a conclusion. However, the Mayavadis, they deny the existence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So Srila Prabhupada used to say the Mayavadis are very, very dangerous and we should not actually associate with Mayavadis. So coming back to the story of Sukadev Goswami. So Sukadev Goswami heard the Srimad Bhagavatam from Lord Shiva, but he still, when he was in the womb, he was still had that impersonal Brahmavadi mood. And so, and he didn't want to come out of the womb because it was very peaceful there. He was detached from everything and he didn't want to come out. So then Vyasadeva had to promise him that when he comes out, Maya will not, grab him. And, he decided that he's going to actually narrate and teach his son the Bhagavatam. So when Sukadev Goswami came out, Vyasadeva narrated the Bhagavatam, and so Sukadev Goswami understood who Krishna is, through the qualities, the activities of Krishna. Now, funny enough that Vyasadeva, and we've heard this in the Srimad Bhagavatam, Vyasadeva actually compiled the Srimad Bhagavatam, but he also had this impersonalist sort of conception, like Srila Prabhupada says that they study the Vedas and, they're students of Vedas. So he wrote this from the Vedas, but he didn't feel satisfied. And his spiritual teacher, Narad Muni, came and he said that you're not happy because you haven't glorified Krishna, Krishna's qualities, Krishna's leelas. And then he understood and he then edited it. So then he also understood. So he came to the conclusion, he understood who the Supreme Personality of Godhead is and what his relationship with God was. So we see that both father and son, and in this verse, Srila Prabhupada mentions that, they first were on that platform, and then once they read the Srimad Bhagavatam or recite or study, whatever, they, realize this as well. So Okay, so there is also the example of the four Kumaras, and they were also impersonalists. And just by smelling the tulsi and the flowers on the feet of Lord Vishnu, they understood, the qualities of the Lord, and they understood. So, they also came out of this impersonalist, um, you know, understanding to a personalist. So you see, when we do Krishna Bhakti, that is a personalist idea of the Lord. And, and that means that we want to have a relationship with Krishna. And we see that that is a lot more blissful. And, this is the Damodar month, and we are hearing the story of Damodar and how, Mother Yashoda wanted to serve Krishna. So the other day I was listening to this class by this Mataji who's come from Mayapur, Uttama Mataji. And she was actually saying that to love somebody, you have to serve them first. And, like, for example, we might say that I love my child, I love my children, but then you don't serve them, you don't do anything for them, you don't cook for them, you don't bathe them, you don't dress them, but you say to the child, I love you. Then will the child feel loved? Just like that, if we want to love Krishna and, progress towards Krishna, then we need to also serve. So it's a personal relationship. You can only serve a person, otherwise there is no service. So that is a personal relationship that we need to build with Krishna. So, Krishna Bhakti is all about being personal. So Mother Yashoda was churning the butter because, like, she had so many maids. They could have churned it. Why was she personally churning it? But out of her love for her son, she was actually churning the butter. And, so we can also learn from this that we need to serve Krishna. So anyway, going back to the story of Sukadeva Goswami, we heard that in today's verse that he then became so absorbed in Krishna's qualities that he became very dear to the Lord and the Lord's devotees. So Vishnu Janas, so he became dear and they became dear to him. So, when we, in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says that more than me, I get happy when you serve my devotees. So, if we insult Krishna, okay, he might not like it, but if you insult devotees, Krishna doesn't like it at all. He gets very, annoyed. So, if we want to love Krishna, then we also need to love his devotees and have that personal relationship with his devotees as well. And in return, the devotees will also love you and have that relationship with you. So, that's what they're talking about, that he was very dear to the devotees. And, in the coming verses and cantos, we will see how, what platform actually Sukadeva Goswami was on. So when he then comes out of the womb at the age of 16 years, he immediately leaves home because he doesn't want to get attached to his mom and dad and parents and, family. So he just leaves home. And Vyasadeva is running after him and saying, oh my son, come back. Why are you going away? And, he's so distressed, but Sukadeva Goswami didn't want to know this. And we see that further on, before he comes and he starts talking, he starts reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam to, the Parikshit Maharaj and the assembled sages. He comes like he was not wearing any clothes or anything, so he was not attached to anything. And people responded to him like that as well. He goes past women who are bathing, and they didn't feel shy, and they were not bothered that he didn't have any clothes on. Whereas when Vyasadeva, who's running after his son, comes through, then the ladies got shy and they covered themselves. So we can see that Sukadev Goswami then got all these wonderful qualities, and he became realized in Krishna consciousness. And so the point is that the Srimad Bhagavatam is so important and powerful, actually. Once we get absorbed in it, that is something that we all need to do. And in this month of Kartik, we can take a vow that I know that every day on this platform, the Srimad Bhagavatam is being recited and studied and everything, but we can just vow and pray that we can go even deeper, and that will help our spiritual journey towards the Lord. So I think that I will stop here, and if anyone would like to add or ask any questions.
Hare Krishna, dear Sachi Rani.
Hare Krishna, Palita Mataji.
Hare Krishna, what a simple way you have explained this verse. It's really nice. I remember many years ago in the temple room upstairs, there was a devotee who used to recite Srimad Bhagavatam, and he narrated them at, Lord Shiva was speaking Srimad Bhagavatam to Parvati, and he said, but I'll be closing my eye and I won't know. So how would I know that you're listening? Like you said, she was saying, yes, this is the noise I will make. So then he was continuing, and then parrot, Shukadev Goswami as a parrot, because he is Radharani's parrot, and because he loved Shima, listening to Srimad Bhagavatam, so then he was listening very, very nicely. And when he saw that Parvati is sleeping, so he said, oh my God, and like you said, that you will stop. And then he started, saying the same thing, responding by that. And then suddenly, Lord Shiva just woke up and saw the Parvati is not really listening, she's sleeping. So he said, who is making this noise, So then he saw, oh, okay, the parrot. Then he started chasing. I remember, as you are now reciting, I remember many, many years ago, we used to listen, and, as it's really nice. Yeah, it's really nice. You very nicely, simply explained this verse. Thank you very much. It was nice listening. Thank you.
Krishna. Thank you, Palita Mataji. Anyone? No? Okay. Should we stop, or shall I just add a little bit more? Maybe I'll just add one more point then. So in the verse, it says that here, that therefore it appears that Srila Sukadev Goswami also had no liking for the devotees. And so Srila Prabhupada actually commented that the Brahmavadis, they're not that fond of devotees, and actually, devotees are not that fond of them either. And so, it's I found that really surprising that he had no liking for devotees. But since he himself became a saturated devotee, he desired always the transcendental association of Vishnu Janas. So how much he actually changed, from, not liking the devotees to actually, becoming so saturated. And, the devotees, they saw when he came to recite, they were, they saw him and they gave him so much respect, and they said that he's the best person, to speak. And it's amazing how it all just changed. And, it's amazing how Srimad Bhagavatam can actually change our lives and personalities. So I think we will stop here if no one else would like to.
Hare Krishna,
share.
Mataji, Dhanavad Pranam, Yogesh
Hare
Pranam.
Krishna.
Thank you for a wonderful class. Just to elaborate a little bit, actually, Sukadev Goswami is, as you described him, is an eternal associate of the Lord. He is rather his parrot in the spiritual world eternally. So there is no question of him being a monist or a Brahmavadi. But in order to enact the Leela and enhance the taste of the Bhagavatam, he takes the role of a monist at birth in order to be attracted and be absorbed back by these two verses that were sent out, the whole Bhakti verse, etc. So he's not actually a monist in original form, but he just takes that form for Leela purposes, and then he shows what devotion is really about once he hears the two verses and gets absorbed. So it's slightly incorrect to say that he was a monist and then he became a devotee. He was always a devotee, but he took on that Leela of a monist at birth in this particular instance.
That's right. Yes. And, like he was always with Radharani and Krishna. So how could he be a Brahmavadi? He was there all the time with them. So there is no question of him being, absolutely right. Thank you, Prabhuji. Okay. Okay, so shall we stop here? Okay, thank you all so much for your kind attention. And please do forgive me if I made any mistakes. Thank you very much. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha
Chaturveda Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah.
Hare Krishna,
Srila
Mataji.
Prabhupada
Thank you for the
Jai.
wonderful
Krishna.
class.